It's not what you know, but who you know. The Fred Priestley story. When I remember my friend, Mr. Priestley, I think of the words from the prophet Jeremiah. Jeremiah quoted God to have said, "Let not the wise glory in wisdom, let not the mighty glory in might, nor let the rich glory in riches. But let those who glory, glory in this, that they understand and know me, that I am the Lord who exercises loving kindness, judgment, and righteousness in the earth, for in these I delight." People we meet can have a profound impact on our lives. Mr. and Mrs. Fred Priestley are two such people for me. I met them when I was about 23 years old. They rented out the 4 bedrooms on their second floor. I lived in one of them. In spite of their age and health issues, they were very hard workers. Both had been widowed, and they were married when he was about 30. Mrs. Priestley had 2 sons, and Mr. Priestley had 1 daughter. One of her 2 sons was shot down and killed on a mission during World War II. She often spoke about her loss, which was still very much on her mind these many years later. She was an amazing woman. One story illustrates this point. One day, I helped them load bales of hay onto a flatbed. I'd pick up the bales of hay, which had been produced by Mr. Priestley with their baling machine, and place them onto the flatbed. Mrs. Priestley would take them from me and stack them while Mr. Priestley drove the tractor. Mr. Priestley and I enjoyed talking together. Even though he was clearly a humble man, because I asked many questions, I learned how amazing he really was. As an 8-year-old, he was considered a concert violinist. Because his mind was so keen, he was able to look at automated textile machines from one factory and reproduce it from memory in another factory. He was responsible for automating several mills during the 1930s and 40s. To top that off, he was a farmer. The quality of milk from their cows was so impressive, the agricultural branch of a university asked him about his findings. It turned out the mixture of grasses he had figured out was the trick. Add to that, they cared about their cows, washing the udders before each milking. For most of his life, Mr. Priestley relied on his intellect, on his hard work ethic, and on some of the finances they'd accumulated. But something changed his life. A heart attack. When he was 69, his heart failed. He was in the hospital when Mrs. Priestley was called to come to his bedside. His veins had collapsed, and the end was near. As I sat with him in their den listening to his story, Mr. Priestley told me of a quick conversation he had had with God while his wife was there resting near his cold body. He said to God, "Okay, I give up." Throughout his life, he had not really needed God, or so he thought. He was incredibly talented and quite brilliant. It was a simple prayer, but at that moment he felt warmth fill his body. He fell asleep, and to his wife's amazement, as well as his own, he was still alive in the morning. The first thing he asked for was a Bible. He started from Genesis and read through the 66 books of the Bible 3 times before I met him. After telling me this story, he had tears in his eyes. He looked at me and said, "You are so lucky." "Mr. Priestley, why do you say that?" I asked. He said, "Because you started so much earlier in life than I did. If I had it all to do over again, I'd want to get to know God long before age 69. There are at least 2 things we can learn from Mr. Priestley that will help us answer how shall we now live in the 21st century. The first is, time is precious and fleeting. As valuable as knowledge and finances are, it is far better to get to know our Creator in a personal way. Knowing Jesus will help us put the other things in life into proper perspective. The second thing we can learn from Mr. Priestley includes a parable of Jesus, which I told Mr. Priestley about. My intention was to encourage him. It's recorded for us in Matthew chapter 20. Jesus said that heaven will be like a landowner who hired workers for his fields. The first group was hired first thing in the morning for a specific amount of pay. Periodically throughout the day, he hired more laborers. At the end of the day, he paid them all. It turned out that no matter how long they worked, each one received the exact same pay. After hearing Mr. Priestley's story about getting to know Jesus and his lament over having waited so long, I was able to share with him that in God's eyes, he and I would equally inherit heaven. You see, God accepts us no matter when we give our hearts to Him. Look at the thief on the cross next to Jesus. He was a bad man who finally gave in to Jesus. So whether you're a good person, smart and hardworking like Mr. Priestley, or not a nice person like the thief, God loves us and is waiting for us to ask Him into our lives. Mr. Priestley literally felt warmth of new life, and so will we if we stop striving and humble ourselves before our God and Creator. He waits for us. Why should we wait any longer? If this video has been a blessing, please subscribe to this YouTube channel and press the like button. She was 81, and yes, he was 72.